President Trump rallied supporters in Manchester, New Hampshire last night. It's a state that he's trying to win in 2020 after it went blue in the 2016 presidential election. At the rally, he attacked his Democratic opponents, and he also addressed gun control and the economy. Our Paula Reed reports on why New Hampshire is just so important to the president.
The 401ks, down the tubes, everything's going to be down the tubes. So whether you love me or hate me, you got to vote for me.
President Trump tried to project confidence about the economy in his pitch to New Hampshire voters, a state he narrowly lost to Hillary Clinton in 2016, and recent polls show President Trump trailing Democratic frontrunner Joe Biden there by 10 points.
We should have won New Hampshire. That was taken away.
The president defended his ongoing trade war with China, which economists say is partly to blame for the market plunge this week.
We are doing very well with China, despite the fact that they want to have you believe to the contrary.
Voters in attendance said their support is unwavering.
I think that he proved himself a lot in the last 3 years. The market, the stocks, the jobs, the economy.
And in his first rally since mass shootings in Ohio and Texas, he stood firm on supporting gun owners' rights.
We will always uphold the right to self-defense, and we will always uphold the Second Amendment. We will.
In recent days, the president has said he wants meaningful background checks, but continued to make this controversial claim.
It's not the gun that pulls the trigger. It's the person holding the gun.
All right, so for more on this, we want to bring in Julia Manchester, a political reporter for The Hill. Thanks for joining us, Julia.
Thank you.
So let us talk about New Hampshire, why it's such an important state. The president lost New Hampshire in 2016 by just a bit, though. And he seems to think, if you believe what he said last night, that he can win it the next time around. Why is this state so important to him?
You know, it's important in part because a lot of the voters in New Hampshire kind of fit into President Trump's base, you know, that white working class base that might have voted Democratic before President Trump, but maybe switched Republican once President Trump was on the ticket in 2016. So he's trying to make inroads there. And he's also trying to make inroads with the more rural vote in New Hampshire. We know that New Hampshire and parts of New England can be a bit more conservative in rural areas, and this is what President Trump is absolutely trying to appeal to in New Hampshire.
So this was the first big speech that the president has made since the back-to-back shootings in El Paso and Dayton. And, you know, since those shootings, remarkably, we've seen at least a conversation that looks like a conversation that might go somewhere about at least expanded background checks, which has never really happened before. Usually that sort of conversation is done before it starts. I'm curious about how he addressed the shooting and gun control last night.
Yeah, so he made that controversial claim, as Paula mentioned, in that package, saying that it's not the gun, but the person behind the gun. And that seems like a bit of a walk back of his rhetoric, or at least what we were hearing he was saying behind closed doors earlier this week when Mitch McConnell said he was open to speaking with this when Congress gets back into session. But I don't think his base, especially at these rallies when they're all fired up, necessarily wants to hear that he's going to reach across the aisle and work with Democrats to pass background check laws when it comes to gun control. I mean, we know that rural New Hampshire, you know, obviously there's a big hunting population there. So I don't know how maybe convinced they are about how that will necessarily solve the problem. And there probably are a lot of voters in New Hampshire and in those rural areas that are tied to the National Rifle Association and the gun lobby. So they're probably getting various mixed messages from both sides of the aisle on this. And President Trump knows that saying that a tagline like that, it's not the gun, but the person behind the gun, is going to resonate with them.
So I got to ask you about this other headline that I said earlier. It might sound like a headline from The Onion, but it's the real deal. Apparently, the president has floated the idea of buying Greenland.
Yes.
A lot of people are going to say Greenland, you know, it looks like a lovely place, but why on earth would that be of interest to the president?
Well, surprisingly, and I only knew this just from reading around earlier yesterday, but Harry Truman actually floated buying Greenland, I believe, at the end, earlier in the 20th century, but it obviously hasn't been floated recently. So I think it's just kind of something maybe President Trump saw in terms of maybe Truman and kind of thought, oh, maybe I can do this. We know that Greenland is strategically located close to the Arctic Circle. So obviously China and Russia want to have a stake up there in terms of shipping routes and such. But yeah, it is a very random story, but we know that Greenland is saying that the island is not for sale today.
Yeah, right, exactly. And just so people sort of understand, there are apparently a lot of natural resources up there. And Greenland is a country, but it's sort of under the guardianship of Denmark, the Queen of Denmark.
Yes,
so that is why the idea of purchasing it from Denmark is actually a thing, because it could happen.
Right.
So listen, finally, you've written a piece about the 2020 campaign called House Democrats Targeting 6 More Trump Districts for 2020. Why do they feel that these districts that went for Trump, why do they feel the support is softening?
Yeah, so it's important to look at 2 of those districts. So one of them is Justin Amash's district, and he was the congressman that left the Republican Party, I believe, on the 4th of July and turned into the independent, and now is an independent. So they see a gateway there because clearly there will, it'll essentially be maybe an open race since Justin Amash is running as an independent and may not be able to shore up enough support from Democrats and, Republican independent, leaning independents, if you will. Another district is Iowa's 2nd district. Congressman Dave Loebsack is leaving, and that will be an open seat, and they see a gateway there. And then you're also seeing a number, other districts that may lean more Republican than those Michigan and Iowa districts that I just mentioned before, and more gateway, and definitely in terms of the suburban vote. We know that a lot. You hear that term, suburban white, college-educated women who are, may be frustrated with President Trump's rhetoric and may lean maybe more conservative on some issues, but have been turning more and more to the Democratic Party, and we saw that in 2018. So they're looking to target those. And then in Virginia's 5th district, we're seeing that could be a big gateway for Democrats because we know how much money Republicans spent in that district, which is rural and which you would think would lean conservative, but they've doled a lot of resources out to defend it. So I think Democrats are definitely focusing on that as well. And also, if you look at 2018, we saw that a lot of Democrats, especially Democratic female veterans, Allison Spanberger comes to mind, won seats in Virginia. So you hear a lot of talk about Democrats looking to get Texas, but I think a lot of the action is actually in Virginia.
Very interesting. Julia Manchester, thank you very much.
Thank you.